Hello guys, welcome you all. Today we have a precious guest with us, Duncan Rouleau. Sir, thank you for accepting our invitation. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Duncan
I
Rouleau.
really appreciate
Sir, thank
the
you
time
for
that you're
accepting our
Thank
invitation.
you.
Welcome.
Thank you for having
When
me. I
we
really
announced
appreciate
Sir, thank
the
you
time
for
that you're
come to ITOTG. Everybody
Thank you for
was
having me.
very
I really
fascinated,
appreciate
and
the
we
time
have
that you're
opened a ITOTG in order to collect some questions from fans, and we got 50 questions from there, and we picked them. We organized, and we got 50 questions for you, and we have made quite a research about you in the internet and found some podcasts that you were in. So, anyway, without a further ado, that you were in. So, anyway, without a further ado, that you were in.
Yeah. Well put together. Well put together.
Yeah, thank you. And our editor, Tarık, also made some great edits on Instagram.
Well put together.
Yeah, we prepared. And our editor, Tarık, also made.
Yayından ses geliyor mu? Az önce yankı var diye bir kıstım falan ama gelmiyor da olabilir. Aleykümselam, merhaba.
They made my childhood and my youth, and also just they enriched it. They made it feel childhood. It gave it dimensions and purpose, and it made it exciting. And you can presume where you're going, right? You can have an idea. A lot of scientific experiments, you go, I'm going to mix A and B, and hopefully I'll
Yayına
get
ses
C.
düzgün bir şey de geliyor mu?
That's my theory. So let's mix A and B, and what do I
Benim
get?
veya
You got X.
mevcut
You
videonun
did not get C. At that moment,
izleyen
if you
varsa.
go, oh, that didn't work, that's where you should creatively go, why did I get X? That's really interesting. I had thought it was going to go someplace, but it went someplace I didn't count on. And what can I learn from that? And I think that that's the other part of being creative, is you can start thinking or copying your heroes. You can follow that. But at some point, you're going to discover that you're not them. You're not going to do that. But what you can do is learn from your own mistakes. And then that's when it's on you to take the next steps. I think those are both super important things.
Yeah. And also, in Ben 10 and Generator Rex, as you mentioned, Ben is a boy, young boy, and he didn't know how to use Omnitrix when he first got it. And he has a family, a grandpa and a sister, an elder sister. And especially in the general Ben 10, I guess you broke down a barrier, which is superheroes always save the world, and their loved ones never ever get hurt. They never lose.
Right.
And I guess that makes familiarize the character and makes audience create an emotional bond easily, the way I see.
Oh, I agree. What was super important for us too when we were building out the cast, and specifically for myself, for a couple of different reasons, but was that Ben had family that was part of his growing up, his experience of becoming a better person, having the wisdom of those people around him, and that he could fight with and he could, differ from, but and then also learning that Grandpa had his own history. He did things too, and that Ben, being self-involved and young, part of growing up is learning that there are other people and they have feelings and needs and wants and all of that stuff. And that's very important. And a lot of, at least in the States and in Western storytelling, there's this idea of the lone hero, the individual who comes in and cleans everything up. And that happens a lot in American Westerns and things like that. There's the guy who comes in and cleans everything up. And I think even in samurai shows too. That's not how things really work. They have a group of people who contribute, and it is a group of people. It is a community that help create something. Just because he physically can do some of those things, it doesn't mean that he had the wherewithal or the ability to see everything on what to do. And so it's important that he listens just as much, and that his family there, his group, not only are looking out for him, but they are also looking out for everybody else too. I think it's just to me that was very important, and we hadn't seen a lot of that in our cartoons. So that was a bit of a fight to get people who were to move away from that model into a family kind of unit. That was something that was unique at the time.
Yeah,
At least
and
in the States.
yeah, I get it. And when I was a child, I used to watch Ben 10 like every day. But when you accepted our interview, I started to watch again some episodes, and I realized better something, with the. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm back. And it's a good chance to move on with the question. Yeah, when we talked about Ben 10, I guess there is an episode called Ken 10, Ben 10,000. And we saw there an adult Ben who had mastered, all the Omnitrix characters in a high degree. He could easily travel between universes and transform into a variety of aliens. And we watched Ben 10 grew up so fast, but we couldn't watch Ken 10 too much. As an audience and as a fan, I would really love
Turhan
to
Tüccaroğlu.
watch an adult Ben
Şimdi sen
10,
buraya soru
in
soruyorsun
his
ama
prime time.
bunu gene ben cevaplamayı
And
söylüyorum. Onlar
why
görmüyor. Zaten canlı yayında
do you
yapmıyorlar bunu.
think
Halihazırda çekmişler bu
production
videoyu.
which is based on Ken 10
Onun üzerinden şu an yorum
didn't
yapacağız.
exist or didn't
Şu anda
make
mesela
in
Kenten
the
bölümüyle
past?
alakalı ve
Sure.
Kenten'in devamı
Well, there's
olacak mı olmayacak mı
some
gibi bir
very
şey soruyor.
boring reasons for that.
Dediğin soruyla
Some
alakalı net bir
business
cevap yok ama onu
reasons
söyleyeyim.
for
Şu
that,
anlık eminim.
more
Öncesinden
than there
sonra
are
bu da yok şu an.
creative. With a character like Ben 10 and a universe that is as rich and there's so many different characters, it'd be fun to explore all of them, at any particular time. And well, let me just reel it back just a little bit. One of the things that happened with Ben and the different shows as he was moving along and he was getting a little older, one of the things that happened there is that there was an audience, one audience that started growing up with them. But this was up with Ben. This was super popular with Harry Potter, too. Seeing Harry Potter grow up, and as he was getting older, the world became more expansive and more dangerous, and there were grayer things. Not everybody was all good or all bad, and people were a spectrum of different things. And that was a very popular thing, and it was working really well with that audience. But it was kind of felt that we were losing maybe, now this is where business comes into it, that we were not allowing new audiences to discover Ben, that we were just going to stick with one audience. So that was one discussion that happened. And then there's a terrible business model, but it's true.
Anladığım kadarıyla dediği şey şu.
People who are older don't buy toys and they don't buy all of the ancillary stuff that comes with it. And part of how these shows get made, and this is Cartoon Network thinking, and was that they needed those elements as part of the reason to fund another show. So each time it has to be able to pay for itself in some ways first. And it's just always felt like for younger kids, they're the ones who will buy these kind of things. So there's a business decision behind some of those reasons. After having said all of that, you can't rule out the idea that we'll do something like that. It just, right now, Cartoon Network, or even with streamers, the way people watch TV, I'm sure you guys are already experiencing it. How much actual TV do you watch? Everything you're watching is on social media and phones, and it's the formats are all changing, and the way productions are done, where they get funded and made and distributed, people are going through a big learning curve on how to be able to make that happen. So we'll see. That's all I can say about that. There's always a chance for that, and we know that there's a love for it, and we do too. We have it as well. We would love to tell some of those stories as well. So it's not a creative reason that we're not doing those stories. It's much more of a financial one. And Cartoon Network
Şimdi diyor,
ultimately
yatıracak bir sorunumuz
owns Ben
olduğundan
10.
değil diyor.
We
Finansal
sold it to
durumdan
them,
dolayı
so
diyor.
they get to make the final decisions on what shows get made and what shows don't.
Then fingers crossed one day.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
And
Şu an
now,
Cartoon Network'u satmışlar
yeah,
galiba hakları. Öyle
and
bir şeyden bahsetti. Ben tam anlamadım.
in
Doğru
Turkey,
anladığım kadarıyla.
in my childhood, everybody had Ben 10 merch. You know, a pencil case, a bag, or a cup and can, who is the person who contacted with you as a Ben 10 cup. And the way I see the Cartoon Network's decision was successful because when I talk with my friends, they say they didn't like the new Ben 10, but
Right.
the younger generation loves it, and I guess
Şimdi işte
yeah,
reboot'la doğru bir
that's
karar
that.
verdiğinden
But
bahsediyor Cartoon
I
Network'un.
mean,
Finansal
I had
anlamda
a
diyor.
similar
Benim
experience, but with
arkadaşlarım, benim
different
dönemde
characters.
arkadaşlarım sevmiyorlar ama diyor.
I
Şu anki küçük çocuklar seviyor
drew
diyor. Küçük
comic
Ben
books,
10'i diyor.
but as a child, I
Finans olarak
read
doğru bir karar olabilir ama
Spider-Man
ben
and
tabii buna
Captain
katılmıyorum.
America and all of those comic books that are now being made movies. And they're different. They aren't the same thing as what I
O da
grew
diyor
up
ki
with.
şu
And I
anda
had to kind
Captain
of go,
America
wait
veya
a
Spider-Man gibi
second, they
karakterlerin,
didn't do
çizgi
that in the
romanlarının
books, or that's
filmleri
not how
birbirinden
they
farklı oluyor diyor. Birbirine aynı
behave, or
değiller diyor.
whatever. You know, it's whatever. But yeah, that's kind of the sad truth of growing up. Getting a little older. You got to let or include other people in the if they want to be.
Yaşlanıyoruz diyor,
You got to
büyüyoruz
find
diyor ve
ways
bu
to
yüzden diğer
include other
insanların
people into the
başka yere
yeah,
geçmişe izin vermeliyiz gibi
definitely,
düşünüyor. Ve anladım yani
definitely.
reboot hala başarılı olarak görüyorlar. Finans olarak başarılı
Mehmet,
olabilir,
if you
ben ona bir
want,
şey
you can
demiyorum
ask
ama
the question, by the way.
başarılı bir yapım değil.
Yeah, as you know,
Zaten
we are a
o belli.
gaming
Açıklamaya
club,
gerek yok.
and I would like to ask if the IPs you produce can be adapted to the gaming industry. I have loved the Generator X IP from Manafaction since I was a child, and I think it's underrated, at least in Turkey. As a game design student, I found Generator X very suitable for adaptation into a game during
Buna
my high school
Generator
years,
X'i
and creating a video
underrated
game was one of
olmuş
my
dünyada
dreams.
ve
Upon
oyun
researching, I
geliştirici
discovered
öğrenciler diyor
that a video
Generator
game
X
was
diyor
released
oyuna çevirmekte diyor
during the
çok daha
PS3 era.
uyumlu
So,
bir şeyi
are
IP
you
ondan bahsediyor
satisfied
diyor.
with the game adaptations of your content? And do
Sizin
you
diyor
plan to
içeriklerinizi diyor
release new games in
oyun
the future?
adaptasyonlarını görebilir miyiz ileride diyor. Ben veya Generator X
I also
açısından soruyor galiba.
I'm also a gamer. I also love playing table RPGs too. I love playing
Zaten
those kind of things
böyle
as
şeyler
well.
yapan adamlar
And
RPG
I
oyunları oynaması
I
normal.
think I always think a little bit in terms of games too. How you could construct it so that that you could play these characters, or you could be these characters. There's always an element of that. Man of Action also works on a lot of video games. Right now, we're working on a few video games. We had our start with Legends X-Men video game, which we started. And so, was I satisfied? Just to answer those questions directly, was I satisfied with the Rex
Bence de
game? It
Reinforced
was
Ultimate ile
fine. It was
spesifik olarak
not
Reinforce'dan
as great of a
bunu
game as I
söyleyebilirim.
would have
En
loved
iyi
it to be.
işlenmiş Ben.
And there's a
Ben
lot
10
of reasons
serisi,
for
Ben 10
that.
dünyası en iyi şekilde onda.
Is
Animasyonu
there the
bozuluyor
potential for
ama
another
anladığım kadarıyla
Rex
bu adamlar
game?
çok da bundan
The
rahatsız değiller.
sad truth is this:
Aynı
is
şekilde devam
that
etmek
Rex
istiyorlar. Bence seri çıkmayacak. O adam
did
öyle
well,
onun
but
gibi
it
konuştu.
didn't
Ne
do
bir
on
oyun
the
ne bir şeyden
same
bahsetmiyor.
level
Ben
as
Tennis'ın olgun bir
Big
şekilde
Hero
görmek ben de
6
isterim.
or
Ama bir
Ben
anda
10.
olgunlaşması istemem.
Those are
17 yaşında
very
falan da oyun 18
well-known
yaşında.
properties. Rex is
Devam
not as
etmesini
well
isterim
known.
böyle.
I
O
personally
sıkıntılardan
love
devam
Rex
etsin.
a great deal. That's I always thought that was a very rich world.
Ama
And
şu
we
anda
are
Generator
now
X'in
entering a new
oyun
phase where
olma, IP olma gibi bir şeyden bahsediyor.
games are easily
Ya Ben 10.
overtaking all other forms of entertainment as far as where people want to spend their time and their money and their creative life. They want to play with games. So of course, there's always the chance for it, but
Oyun
Rex
yapmak
might be a
için
little
bir
more
şey var
difficult
diyor.
of a sell compared to Ben. There might very well be another
Satış
Ben
anlamında galiba
game very
anladığım
soon, and
kadarıyla
there probably
Generator
will be
X ile Ben
another
10'i
Big Hero 6 game.
kıyaslamıyor.
As you guys
Çünkü
probably well
yani
know,
Generator X oyunu bile olsa bu
games
kadar
are
çok satacağını
expensive.
düşünmüyor
They
anladığım
take
kadarıyla.
time to put
Mantıken
together.
doğru. Çok satmaz.
and
Satmayabilir. Ben
it's
10'e
a very
kıyasla.
long concerted
Ki
effort.
Ben 10'in bile
So
oyunları
for
o
something
kadar
like
kaliteli
Rex
olmasına
to
rağmen,
actually
kaliteli
happen
olmamasına
again,
rağmen
two things have to happen.
satmışlığı var. Çok da
One,
değil ama yani her zaman beklentinin altında.
and this
yani.
is
Ben 10
happening
gibi
very
Frontier
quickly
üzerinde.
right now with AI and with a lot of the different types of newer technologies. The cost of making a game is going to become less. So that opens the potential for
Acaba
other
yeni
IP,
AI'lerle
and
falan
Rex
düşüyor
could
diyor. O yüzden
benefit from that.
Rex gibi bir IP ile
The other thing
yapmak
is
daha tutarlı, tutumlu
one of our goals
uyabilir diyor.
always with Cartoon Network
Bizim
and
hedefimiz diyor
with Ben
Cartoon Ben üzerinde diyor.
was that Ben was going to be kind of our Spider-Man.
Ben bizim
He
Spider-Man'imiz
would
diyor. Bizim
start a
yüzümüz diyor.
universe and
Marvel'ın
that we could
Spider-Man'i
build
gibi.
out from that universe. And
Manufacturing'da
Rex
Ben'i.
was the second part of
Rex'e
that
ikinci
of
plandaki bir
that
karakter
iteration.
diyor.
Is that we
Veya
wanted to
IP
build
bir
up a Cartoon Network superhero
proje.
universe.
Manufacturing ve
And
Cartoon orada ikisini birlikte diyor.
If Ben still has more potential for live action shows and for
Bak şu anda live
new
action'dan bahsediyor.
cartoons. He's still very well, they call it in the business an evergreen, which means that every once in a while there'll be a new version
Hala
of him
potansiyeli
that
var
will
diyor. Bak
keep
yeni
on
versiyon
coming
diyor.
out. And
Yeni
inside
versiyonu
of
gelecek
those,
diyor.
we're
Yine
always
bir
trying to move
retcon
Rex.
gibi
We're still
bir şey
we've
olacak
never
belli.
given up on the idea of creating a larger
Rex
hero
üzerinde pek bir şöyle bir
universe.
şey yok
And
gibi anladım.
Heroes United, I don't know if you remember that show. That was when Rex and Ben crossed over,
Onlara Heroes
and
yönetmeninden bahsetmiş
they went on an adventure. It's still the number one rated crossover for Cartoon Network's history of
Aynen.
all time. So
Cartoon'daki crossover'ların bir numarası.
there is some audience desire for it, but is it enough to make a game? Not at the moment.
Yani oyun yapacak kadar yeterli değil diyor şu anda. Şu an için diyor.
Yes, I get it. We have talked about the new Ben 10, but I think if I don't ask this, audience will kill me. So I would like to ask you, what do you think about the last reboots? And this was
Dediğin
the
gibi
most
olabilir.
asked
Ama
questions.
benim daha çok
Sure.
olayı
I know that the
Tam ona
reboot
uygun
is
mu bilmiyorum.
not popular with
O kadar sert olur mu
the
bilmiyorum.
the original Ben 10 watching audience. I
Şu anda
understand that.
yeni Ben 10
But
arkadaşı
it did
konuşuyoruz.
very well with new audiences. And
Audience.
I don't think people really remember, but
İnsanlar pek
each
hatırlamıyor diyor.
iteration of Ben 10, except for, well, no, that's not even true. From what they call classic Ben 10 to, Ultimate Alien to all of them, there was a lot of complaints with people who are like, this isn't Ben, because they like the one before that. And you find that audiences coalesce around different iterations of Ben 10, different audiences, and there is a significant audience of younger viewers who really like the reboot.
Daha
I
küçük
like the
izleyiciler reboot'u
reboot
seviyor diyor. Ben de
for a
seviyorum
lot of
reboot'u
different
diyor.
reasons because
Pek çok sebepten dolayı. Çünkü diyor.
I liked going back to a younger Ben.
Tekrar genç olması
We wanted to
sevdim
play
diyor.
up humor a little more. We wanted to try
kattım
humor.
diyor.
I know right now the taste is for it to get more mature and more aggressive
Daha
and
ilginç
all
ve
of
daha
those things,
agresif.
and I like those too. Don't get me wrong, but I
Neşe de
don't
içebiliriz ama diyor.
think that means
Bunu sevmem ama
that
diyor.
humor and kind of a light
Mizah
touch is a
daha
bad thing in of itself.
hafif dokunuş diyor.
The way I look at all of these things is that Ben is big enough of a
Ben
character,
yeterince büyük
and his
diyor.
world is big enough of a world that we can experiment
büyük
with a
hatta
lot of
yeterince büyük
different
dünyası
types
var
of
diyor.
takes, including a
Farklı
Ben
şeyleri
10,000, just as well
tecrübe
as
edebiliyor
a
diyor.
reboot Ben.
Ben
So,
10.000
and there were a couple of characters I really
Ben 10.000
liked in the
reboot'ta iyi diyor.
reboot
Anladığım kadarıyla çok iyi
that
İngilizce
weren't
yok
in
ama
the originals. So, and
biz şu anda orijinallerde değiliz diyor.
Kevin 11 being a version that we wanted to do in the original version. We wanted him to have his own anti-trick. So.
Okay, thank
Antitriksi
you.
olmasını istiyoruz diyor.
Mehmet,
Saçma bir
you can
karar.
ask.
Evet tam
Yeah,
reboot için diyorsa
when
reboot
we
yaptılar.
ask
Daha
ourselves
sonrasında
what's the
bahsediyorsa
source
saçma bir
of
karar.
interest in this industry today, it comes down to curiosity that began in childhood. I think that especially in our childhood, we watched high quality works that included your productions. However, I feel that series produced today are more childish. What is
Evet,
the
daha şu an
reason
çok
for
daha
this?
çocuksun diyor. Önceden daha
Hmm.
yüksek kaliteli şeyler izliyorduk diyor.
I'm not sure if I share that experience. I mean, look at
Tecrübelerimi
Arcane.
paylaşmakta emin değilim. Bundan
That's
şöyle
a
emin değilim.
really sophisticated show.
Mesela Arkane'den bahsediyor şu an.
I will
Sofistike bir
say
show diyor.
this. This is maybe what you're experiencing, and I suppose it really depends on. Well, it depends on a couple of different factors, but
Farklı
what has
faktörleri
happened in the last
değişiyor
30
diyor.
years, at least
30 yılda.
from coming out of the States, is that we finally adopted or fell in love with a lot of Japanese anime. That became a
Daha çok
big
animeye
influence,
sahip
and
çıktık
a lot
diyor.
of the
Daha çok
creators who were
sahiplendik
coming
artık diyor
up
bir yerden sonra 30 yıl sonra.
were influenced more by that material than they were by what more traditional Western stuff that perhaps.
Batı,
well, myself, I grew up on a lot of
Batı'nın
Japanese anime, but that's
şeyini,
old Japanese
animelerden
anime.
daha çok
I'm
şey
talking
aldık
Speed
diyor.
Racer, that kind of stuff. I
Anladığım
love
kadarıyla bu
that
çocuklaşma şeyini oraya getiriyor
material.
anladım. Childish dediği
You have
mevzuyu
these
ona
different
getiriyor yani.
times where certain things become more important to people, and one of the functions of things moving from TV, like this longer format where things are 30 minutes long, a story is 30 minutes or 20 something odd minutes of a story, to 5-minute stories, to shorter stuff, you don't have time to develop as many of the character
Diyor ki
things.
eskiden diyor
You
20-30
don't have
dakika
time to
arası bölümler
develop
yapıyordun diyor. Şimdi
the
5'er dakika
backstory as
bölümler
much. You have to
yapıyoruz diyor.
kind of get
Bu
to
da
the
diyor
point quicker.
gelişmeyi
And maybe that's what you're experiencing, is
önlüyor
that
gibi
with
bir
these
şey diyor.
shorter
Yani hem karakter
forms,
gelişimi hem hikaye
and
gelişimi hem de
there's
diyor
a lot more animation
projelerin
happening
hazırlanmasından
than there
bahsediyor.
was
Yani 5 dakikalık bir
20 years
bölümün
ago. It
şeyine
took a lot more
ulaşılması
effort
20
and
dakikalık
time
fark
and
diyor.
money to
Anladığım
put that
kadarıyla.
stuff out, but I
Gösterilen
do remember
efor
a
ve
time.
verilen
I'm
para,
old,
zaman
so I
bir değil
remember
diyor
a
herhalde.
time when it felt like every cartoon was exactly the same as the next. You know, I like Scooby-Doo, but every episode was exactly the same thing again and again. So
Her şey aynı olmaya
I
başlıyor. Mesela
grew up
Scooby'yi seviyorum ama hepsi aynı
watching
devam
that,
ediyor
but
diyor. Her
also
bölüm.
reading comic books, and also most importantly, I also, I pull my inspiration from a lot of different places, all over the world, different cultures, different literature, things like that, and wanted to infuse that. So I think that we're in a pretty interesting spot where we got a lot of different types of creators out there, and
Farklı
let's just see how it plays
şekillerdeki,
out. I think that there's a lot of good stuff out there.
yaratıcı yani yapımcılar
But
var diyor.
I also think that
Yapanlar
when we're
üreticilerden
younger,
falan filan
what we
bahsediyor.
see for the first time, that has
Biz
so much
gençken diyor ilk
impact
defa
on us.
görünce diyor
Let's
daha
just
çok
be
etkileniyoruz
honest. That
diyor.
you fall in love with stuff and you feel it in a very different way when you're younger than when
Gençken
you're
daha çok
older,
etkileniyoruz,
because
daha
when
çok
you're
farklı
older,
şeyler
you're a
yapıyoruz
little more discriminating about
Yaşlanınca
what you
diyor
like and don't like.
daha
When you're
büyüyünce diyor daha
younger,
farklı
at
şekilde
first, when
eleştiriyoruz,
you're
daha farklı şekilde
experiencing these
bakıyoruz diyor.
things and people capture your
İlk izlenimimiz aynı
imagination,
olmuyor diyor.
that sticks with
Biraz da
you.
yani
And that's why
hayal
I
gücümüz bunu
also
etkiliyor diyor.
think, just from a storytelling point of view,
Hikaye
it's
yansıtır
super
herhalde diyor.
important when you put out material that you realize that you are
Ben
going
ama
to
verdiği
have an
cevapla çok tatmin
influence on
olmadım bunun.
people.
Bence
And
eski
what kind
izleyici
of
ve Reboot
influence do
sayesinde
you
yeni
want
nesile
to have on
de
people?
biliyor.
I think
Sonra
these are
eski
real,
seriyi bile
genuine
izlediler.
questions you should
Ve
ask
yeni
yourself
seriyi
as a
her
creator.
kitle bekliyor ve saf reboot olması gereken
I hope that answered your
soft
question. I
saf
think it was a
reboot
very
olduğunu düşünüyorum.
insightful, but
Yeniden bir
I
tercih
think that we have
çıkarsın.
a lot more animation these
Reboot'a gerek
days
yok bence.
than we did
Küçük
before.
bir
So
de anlatmaya gerek yok.
it stands to reason that a good percentage of it might not be
Yani
any good.
eski izleyiciyle yeni izleyiciyi buluşturmak için reboot gibi bir seri ihtiyaçları yok bence. Çünkü reboot gibi izleyen bir
About
seri
the
reboot'ta da bunu
inspiration,
bir
it's a
saymaya
bit
başlıyor.
personal, but I
Kıyaslıyor
would
bunları.
like to ask,
Ki çok farklı
did you
evrenler. Birbirinden
ever
bağımsızlar.
face the moment which you couldn't
Her
find
kitle de bekliyor
anything
ama her
to
kitlenin de
draw or
beklediği
get
şeyler farklı ama.
inspired, but you have to
Soft
make it on time, the product?
Yes, of course.
soruyu kaçırdım.
Of course. When you're younger, and when I was an art student and things like that, I didn't want to have anything to do with business. That was just for those guys over there, not me. I never wanted to do that. But there is and you could live your life that way, but you might have a hard time. You might, maybe a lot of people won't see it, or, you're going to have another job too to pay for the, your electric
Büyük
bills
ihtimalle bu tarz
and
işleri
your
yapmak isteyen
food,
birileriyle aklına soru
because
geldi.
that's just the nature of life. So what I discovered about myself, and now this might not be applied to everybody, but this was what applied to me. It was important for me to be trusted by the people who would hire me. So if somebody was hiring me and giving me money, paying me to do a job, it was important to me that I did the best job that I could. And sometimes not being creative and not feeling into it doesn't matter. What matters is that this person put their trust in me and I'm going to get it done. And you find a way. You do. You just find a way. It might not be the stuff that you love the most, but it also isn't necessarily the worst stuff. Sometimes, from a creative point of view, you can spend too much time in your head. You can go, well, I could change it like this, or I could do it like that, or what if I did it this way, or that's not quite right, or whatever those kind of feelings are that are causing you to slow down. Making sure that you're hitting a deadline and somebody going, where is it? We need that, forces you to make decisions. And sometimes it was you who was getting in the way, not the decisions. It was just you being unable to make a decision. So sometimes those deadlines force you to make decisions, and they turn out to be good. Sometimes they turn out to be better than the ones that you spend too much time on. So that's been my experience, at least, no doubt. But of course, I don't think anything, even things that you love doing all the time, there's still a part of it that's work, of showing up and having to do it. That's always the hardest part.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you. And I have a follow-up question about business. What qualifications do you think will someone get hired more easily in the field of animation?
Right. So I do think that the field itself is changing drastically from where I started to where it is now. I'll just tell you this story. This is something that happened to me. My father was a graphic artist, which means he did a lot of logos for things, and he designed things for packaging and stuff like that. And I remember, this is in the 80s, he had to go back to school to learn about this thing called Photoshop, because he did everything by hand. Everything was by hand, but all of the younger guys were learning Photoshop, and they were able to turn work around, and a lot more work around way quicker than him. And he realized that if he was going to keep being hired, he had to learn. He had to go back to school and learn Photoshop. And I remember at that time going, okay, if this is a world that I want to work in, I'm going to have to stay abreast of the technologies and the way work is getting done. So after having said that, I am learning Unreal. I'm going right now, I'm learning Unreal Engine, and I'm going through and I'm taking classes and all the different types of new technologies that are coming, that are being used inside of the industry. I'm not going to be great at all of it, but what I will be is I'll be articulate. I'll be able to talk to people who are better at it than I am, but intelligently. I'll be able to ask, and from a kind of asking people to do work and get it done by a certain deadline, I will know what's a possible ask and what's an impossible ask. Like, I need you to get this done by tomorrow. Impossible. I need you to get this done by Thursday. You can do that because I could do that. You're just going to do it better than me. So it allows me to be more fluid with talking to people who are working with these things. So I always try and stay abreast of all of the information. But I often get asked this question: how do you break in to the industry? And how I broke in and how you guys would break in are two very different things. Now, what I tell everybody is if I was starting right now, I'd be putting things up on the internet every day. I'd be developing stuff. I'd be putting it up there. I'd be building up an audience. I would be putting out short little things. I would be active in the communities. I'd be commenting. I would be part of that community, and I would be learning from people who I thought were doing better jobs than I, where they were going, not who they were, but where they were headed. I want to go in those same places. But that's what I would be doing. And I think once you have that community, it's a lot easier then to meet people who are making certain things happen or different projects. Right now, Man of Action, we're very well established in the traditional animation space, but in the brand new kind of social media, wild digital place, we've got to go through a whole learning curve again of stuff. So you never stop learning. Never stop learning. Always be educating yourself. And nobody should be working harder than you to make your dream come true. Nobody should be. Counting on something else other than yourself is always wonderful, and you should have a good community and friends, but you should always be expecting yourself to put in the time and the effort. Does that make sense? Sound like an old man there, but it's true. It is true, guys. It is true.
Yeah, and knowing that even Duncan Rouleau is learning Unreal Engine inspires us really well,
There's a lot more technology than there was 20 years ago to learn, and I'm not sure I'm always going to keep up on everything, but I do try to identify where I think most people are kind of moving. And Unreal is there are a lot of other programs, software that are similar, but I think that's going to become an industry standard, or it looks like it's becoming a standard. So
yeah, I get it. I totally get it. Yeah, I'm moving on with my next question. Today, young generations are watching Skibidi Toilet and Brain Rot.
yes.
And as one of the most successful cartoon creator, what do you think about these animations? Because we hate them.
Yeah, I know.
Skibidi Tuvalet ve Brain Rot gibi
not ever
animasyonları
going
izliyorlar
to
ve seviyorlar diyor.
go
Bunlar
and
hakkında ne
say
düşünüyorsunuz diyor. Çünkü
that
biz nefret ediyoruz
what
diyor.
people find interesting is dumb. People find it interesting, and that's fine. That's great. I'm not quite sure I share all of it. I mean, I like some of this stuff because what it is it's kind of like having a little candy during the day. You're just doing your life, and then you just have something that's silly. It's out there. It has nothing to do with anything else. And it's like, oh, that's wonderful. But I wouldn't call that storytelling or art in the same way. I think of it more as a kind of like a joke, or like something that has its place, but if it becomes the sole way people share ideas and communicate, I think I'd be sad for that. I think that longer form storytelling, stuff that takes a little more time to think about and takes a little more time to develop, I hope that we don't lose that too. That stuff is easier. This stuff is just easier to do, and it has its place, but it shouldn't become the sole way of sharing ideas in a story format, in a story kind of way.
And do you feel discouraged when you see millions of people are consuming mass medium which has no quality, no meaning, no art? Does this discourage you from producing something valuable?
No. Matter of fact, it makes it all the more important. It makes that all the more important. We live in a time now and it has both good and it has useful and not useful. I'm not going to give terms good and bad. Let's just say where I think that it's helpful and then not as helpful. We're living in a time right now that everybody has a voice and they can put things up on the internet, and it can be, and there's all kinds of tools that they can use to express themselves. And I think that's a good thing. That's a useful thing. I think that's important because I grew up. There were a lot of gatekeepers. There were people that you had to prove yourself to be able to accomplish things, and it would keep a lot of voices out that deserved a place to be heard. But the useful thing of a gatekeeper or something like that is it caused you to be as the best version of yourself that you could. You had to educate yourself. You had to work on those crafts. You had to have an undeniable point of view for it to get financed. And in that process, it forced you to become better. And anything that can force you not to go easy on yourself and just do a prompt into an AI and then put it up on the internet like you created it. You really didn't. The guy who created the AI did it. You're just giving it, it's like, well, it's my prompt. So okay, whatever. You're using a lot of other people's hard work without even knowing it and putting something up there. If you really want to contribute, I think you should know that stuff too. I mean, and then it gives you purpose and it gives you a point of view. And I hope that we don't lose that. I know that that's the fear that we're losing that right now. That seems to be part of the conversation. But I remember when Photoshop first came out. You have to remember there was a big conversation there that art was being lost, that it was now turning digital and that things. But artists appeared, people who knew how to use that tool. It didn't mean that, and funny enough, the people who are really good at using Photoshop were the same people who learned all of the skills of how to do it analog first, who learned how to do it on pen and paper, because those processes, that way of thinking, that way of approaching work with some degree of commitment and with perspective, all of these technologies become those tools for those people. And so right now, AI's out there and a whole bunch of new stuff is out there and everybody's doing it, but not everybody is going to stick with it. They'll move on to the next thing. But the people who stick with it, the people who use it, the people who focus on it, they're going to create amazing work. And I look forward to that. I heard this once, and I think about it a lot. When the Guggenheim Press was first made, everybody was sure that books and everybody was going to be super educated and books were going to be for everybody. But for the first 100 years of that, the number one book that was pressed was not even the Bible or any of these other things. It was this thing called the Witch's Hammer, which was about to use to go and burn witches and to accuse people of being evil. And it was 100 years of some pretty nasty behavior when that technology came out. So I mean, any technology, you have these moments where you have to learn how to live with it and deal with it. And we're in it right now. So we're going to have a lot of garbage, but I don't think that should ever discourage you from, if you want to be an artist, it's still important to have a point of view. It's important to go around, see your live life, and then see if you can't reflect it back into your work in a meaningful way. If you do that, it doesn't matter what tools you're using.
Yeah, that's relief, by the way. Yeah, Mehmet, you can ask your question.
Yeah, my question about your company. How did manufacturing group come together? What is your approach
Aleykümselam
to
Kozmos.
work? A collective formed by comic book creators is very intriguing. How do things operate internally?
Sure. No, that's a great one. Well, so one of the functions of when I was working in comics, it's a very collaborative environment. The writer, the artist, the inker, the colorist, the editor, all of these different disciplines. You have to learn how to collaborate. And this is true for animation too. I think one of the few art forms that is less collaboration is probably the author, the novelist, right? That's probably the least collaboration. But even them, they have writers that they have beta readers, people who read the stuff and tell them what they thought of the material, so that they have a community that helps them and reflects back to them what kind of work they're hoping to do and what kind of work they're
Öyle bir
actually
şeyden
doing.
bahsedilmedi.
That's what a good community
Yayının
should do.
başından
Is
beri
you can have a hope or a
izliyorum.
wish
Öyle hiçbir
of
şeyden
some kind of
bahsedilmedi
work,
tam olarak.
but it
Yani
doesn't
şöyle birazcık
necessarily mean
deyimli
that it
olarak
translates to
cevabı
everybody that
cevap
way.
verdi.
And if you have
Kentenle alakalı
trusted
bir soru
people who
geldi.
aren't just going to be
Kentenin
mean or
ilerleyecek mi falan
inflict
diye.
their
Yani Kenten'in
ego on
hikayesi
your
devam edecek
ego,
mi
but
diye.
they are going to give you
Verdiği
constructive
cevapta daha
work
çok
or
biz bir
constructive
karakteri
feedback, that's super
büyüttük
important
ve
because
geliştirdik diyor.
you
Tıpkı
don't
Harry
always
Potter gibi diyor. Örnek
know
veriyor işte. Hani Harry Potter her
if
filmde,
your
her
work is
kitapta daha
going
da
to be what you
büyüyor
were
ve
hoping it
gelişiyor
would
ve
be
düşmanları
until you get
güçleniyor,
some trusted,
karakterler
and you can
güçleniyor.
make changes.
Onların iyi ve
So
kötü
in
tarafları, herkes
comic
tam iyi değil,
books,
herkes
just to
tam
go
kötü değil
back to
gibi
that, where
hem
the
felsefi
four of
hem
us met,
kavramsal gelişmeler de oluyor. Biz de bunu diyor
there was a lot
şey
of that
üzerine
going back and forth.
geçiriyoruz diyor.
A
O da diyor ben
community of
diyor.
people that we would
O
talk,
yüzden ben üzerine devam edeceğiz diyor.
we talk
Devam
to,
ediyoruz diyor.
and
Bizim şeyimiz o diyor.
all four of
Odağımız
us
o diyor.
worked on
Ama
all of the X books together,
devam
and
edecek gibi bir
all
şey
four of us
tam
worked
net bir
on the
şey cevap
Superman
vermedi.
books
Ona
together.
benzer başka bir şeyden
And
gelen bir soruda da
inside of that, we
dedi
discovered
ki
that
işte
we
haklar
all
diyor. Kartın
really
çöktü
liked
diyor.
each other's
Oraya
ideas.
sattık mı
Like
dedi. Tam oraya
none
tam
of us
emin
really
olamadım.
think
Satmadım mı tam
the
anlamadım.
same way.
Satmışlar mı galiba Manufacturing.
But I respect the
Umarım bir gün
ways that they
çıkar
all
diyor.
think
Daha
very
çok
much, and I
bu
can learn from them,
kreatif
and
yani
I feel that they
üretmemizle
feel the
alakalı bir
same
durum
way
değil
towards
diyor ama finansal
my work as
meselelerden
well.
dolayı diyor çıkıp çıkmama durumu
So
söz konusu
it was
diyor.
a trusted group of
Ondan
people
bahsetti.
that we
Benim
could
anladığım ama bu
share
adam
ideas with.
pek de seri
And
kalktı.
when we
Çizgi film
first
olarak devam
started,
etmeyi
you had
canlısı değil gibi
egos. You
geldi
had
bana.
people
Live action
who,
istiyor gibi geldi.
wanted
Zaten
their
önce live
idea
action
over
olarak
somebody
yapacaktık.
else's
Kaç
idea. That's just
edildi.
natural. It's just human.
Ama bir daha live action'ı
But as we
projeyi
started
başlatmak zor
working
olacağı
together
için
and
yeni
we started
kalkın
moving
yani
forward,
çizgi film üzerine devam edeceklerini
it
düşünüyorum.
became,
Ama
how
devam
can we make
edeceklerini
that
ben
idea
hiç
the
yeşil
best
ışık
idea
görmedim. Onu söyleyeyim
possible?
ama.
And if I was looking at something, I might be
Hatta
worried
reboot'u
that
çok
this idea
beğendiğinden
wasn't in
bahsediyor.
there or this
İşte
notion,
farklı şekillerde yorumluyoruz
and
diyor. Mesela Marvel çizgi romanlarıyla filmleri diyor.
all
Bir
the other
değil
guys
diyor.
would feel that
Farklı
their
şekilde ele
own
alınıyor diyor.
perspectives,
Hikayeler
and we would
yapılar.
try and give an idea
Farklı bir
its
perspektiften
best
bakmanın
chance
da
at living
öneminden
out in the real
bahsediyor
world
reboot'ta.
by kind of
Aynı zamanda işte
looking at
genç
it
kitleyi
and trying to pick
etkilemesinden,
holes in
cartoon
it. Where was it
şundan
going to fall
bahsediyor.
apart? Where isn't? But it was
Ben
always
Prime'den
not
çok
about,
güzel bir şey geleceğini
is my
düşünmüyorum. Bunu
idea
söyleyeyim
better than
yani.
my friend's idea? It is about, is this idea going to help the project? And we developed that over a period of time. That wasn't something that just kind of happened right away. That took work. It's like any relationship. If you're in a relationship with friends, or if you have somebody that you're in a meaningful relationship with, you learn how to work with that person. You learn how to talk to each other. So we did that, and we've known each other now for close to 25 years, 30 years. So in a lot of ways, these are some of my closest relationships, other than my wife and my children. They're probably some of my closest relationships. Doesn't mean we always get along, by the way. We do have time that we spend away from each other. And from being creatives, when it comes to our individual comic book work, we go off and we work with other people. We try and do things just the way that we want to, without having to consider any other kind of worry or concern, whether it's commercial or it's going to sell. We just want to be artists, and so we do that in our comic book work. Inside of our work in animation, it's a very collaborative field. There's a lot of people who are involved. Ben 10, at the height of it, had easily 400, maybe 500 people that were involved on it. And every single one of them, I know it sounds kind of silly, but it's true. Every single one of them made it possible for it to be a good show. All of them did. And without Dave Johnson helping on the designs of the original one, or Andy Sturmer giving us that incredible Ben 10 song, and the executives over at Cartoon Network who really supported the decision making, and Alex Soto, who was the kind of the head director of the first iteration, without their input and without their work, Ben wouldn't have been the Ben that everybody knows. They're just as absolutely important to any kind of project. So it's to value people's opinions and things like that. And so Man of Action, we learned that internally about each other, and we try to do that with any kind of group that we work with. We respect everybody who's coming into it that way. And I think it's super important. There are other people who try to command everything. Like they try to really be like, I'm in charge and you gotta do whatever. I think that those individuals, well, sometimes they get some work done, but most of the time they make a lot of enemies. And we're not really about that. Now, working internally now, where we are,
o serbestlik hoşlarına gittiğini anlıyorum ben. Reboot'ta da çok
any
hoşlarına
project,
gitti.
if one of us
Serbest oldukları
kind
için.
of came up with the initial
Bence de
idea,
yaparlarsa
everybody else then
başka bir beni
kind of
yapabilirler.
becomes
Yani
their assistant.
o
We help
üniversiteden
that
sonraki
person
ya yaştaki
move
bir ben
that
olabilir.
idea
Atıyorum
forward.
20 yaşında
How
bir ben
best we
olabilir.
can,
Sen
whether
sanki
that's
üniversite
showing
sonrası
up to
gibi düşünüyor olabilirsin.
meetings, making,
Ama aslında
doing design work. In my
farklı
case, I
evrendeki
might
farklı
do
bir
some
ben
initial
olabilir.
designs to help them,
Bu ne
get
işe
the
yarar?
ideas
Daha
down
çeşitli
and
şey
things like
anlatabilirler.
that.
Çünkü
But that
geçmişte
person
devamlı
is
sorun
in
yaşamazlar.
charge of the project,
Farklı
the
bir şey
final
anlatabilirler.
decisions.
Ve ben
And it depends on the ideas. It
devamlılığı
depends on the
bozmalarına
idea
ayar
that
olduğum için
gets
bunu
up
kabul
and running,
edebilirim.
who is
Gene
what we
büyük
call
ihtimalle
the point
izlerken ayar
person
olacağım ama
on that.
en azından mantık üzerine oturtabilirim.
And
Çünkü
by
geçmişin devamı
allowing
değil. Bir
enough
farklı
freedom for
evren,
us to be
farklı bir
individuals on our own
versiyon.
creative work,
Bence de öyle olsa daha iyi
and
olabilir.
also
Yapsalar da öyle
allowing
yapacaklar gibi geliyor. Çünkü
yourself,
dediğin gibi rahatlık
or
başka bir
knowing
şey.
that you have
Adamlar
the
bir
freedom
şeyi yaparken
of either
geçmiştekine
being an
bakmayacaklar.
assistant
Devamlılık
or
sorunu
in
çekmeyecekler.
charge at any particular
Geçmişteki
time.
istediklerini alacaklar.
It helps kind of
İşte biz bunu
us
burada bu şekilde kullanabiliriz
stay
gibi.
together as a group.
Sonra devam edecekler.
Büyük
ihtimal en
we
iyi
get
çıkış yolları böyle olacak.
we
Yani
get to
bir
try a lot
Ben
of
10
different roles
orijinal
out, and so none of us feel like we're
serilerin
not
devamı
being
gelmeyecek
heard,
bence.
or too much responsibility is
Gelse
being
bile
put
güzel
on
olmaz.
anyone's
Bahsettiğim
particular
şey şu.
shoulders. But
Burada sana
let's
hak
just
veriyorum
use
Turhan.
Sonic. We just did Sonic for Netflix. That one, Sega, obviously, they get to make all the final choices on everything like that. But the initial idea and how it was all put together, I was the point person on that, but everybody else then came in and helped develop the rest of it. So I dealt with Sega, and I dealt with a lot of the Netflix people and things like that. I was the person day to day who would be talking to all of that kind of stuff. They were the people that would help when I had problems getting an idea or something. This was my team that could help me get that stuff together. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Sure.
Yeah. My next
from a financial point of view, we share everything. We're a collective. We share everything. There isn't the only thing that kind of is our own thing is our comic book work. That's that if we write something or draw something as a comic book, that's ours. But any time that we want to use for something else, a film, animation, whatever, that falls under the umbrella of our collective.
That's super cool. Yeah, and next question is about Kevin, the character, and he was a rather complex character. And
Şimdi
what
bu rakamları
inspired
nereden
you when
edindiğini
creating
bilmiyorum
him,
mesela. Bunlar
and
resmi
what
rakamlar mı
message
değil
did
mi
you aim
bilmiyorum.
to convey with
Bir
this
de yani
character?
reboot
Is it like
ama masrafı
dark
yok. Bir de öyle
spacing,
düşün.
dark side of
Şimdi 5
ourselves
milyar
or something?
kazandırmış. Bu net
Yes,
kazanç mı?
I mean,
Kar mı? Ya da
yes.
elde edilen gelir mi bu? Bilmiyorum tam neden bahsediyor.
When I was
Filmin doğru
growing up,
olduğunu
there
da
was a very
bilmiyorum. Yani sen
popular
nerede
TV
öğrendiysen
show
onun daha
here in
doğru
the
olup
States
olmadığını
called
nereden
The
biliyorsun?
$6 Million Man.
Bir de
I don't know if
üzerinde
you've ever heard of
Reboot
it,
sadece şey
but
değil yani oyuncak
you
olarak
know,
da
he had
ürün
robotic
olarak da
parts
çok
and he was
satmıştır
super
bence.
strong and he was
O
cool.
yüzden şeyden daha fazla
Everybody
kazanmamış da
wanted to be the
olabilir. Ona
$6
da
Million
şaşırmam.
Man in
Ama
my
bu
group
demek
when we were
değil
a
ki
certain age.
kazanmıyor. Daha az
But there was
uğraşıyorlar.
an
5 dakikalık
episode
bölümler yapıyor
where he
Reboot'ta
came
ya.
across the
Kafalarına
$7
göre 5
million
dakikalık bölümler
man.
yapıyor. Ve seyirciyi uyutuyorlar yani. Zaten çocuk
And
seyirci.
he
5
was
yaşına falan hedefliyor
he
bunlar.
was just a little bit better. He was just a little bit older. He was just a
Şu
little
anda
bit
mesela
cooler.
bence yeni bir seri
He was all
yapmak
of these things.
gerçekten
And what that was
riskli.
it was a good indication for us that no matter how
Orijinal
cool
seriden
you
kastım
are
orada
or
klasik
how
mi sadece yoksa
awesome
klasik
you are,
Alien Force
there
Ultimate
might very
Alien
well
olan
be
mı?
somebody who's out there who's
Eğer o birkaç
just
serinin
a
birleşimi 5 bin
little
alsa
bit, better.
Reboot bayağı iyi
And
kazanmış demektir.
that's fine. But how do you deal with that?
Gerçekten
How do you
haklı.
deal
Bu
with it? And then you
gelirleri
use
nereden öğrendin
discover
merak
Kevin
ettim.
has
Yazabilirsen
elements about him
sevinirim.
that are very cool,
Ne ben
but
araştırırım.
he also is
Genelde bu
troubled.
tarz şeyler
There's a
doğru
lot
çıkıyor ama.
once you get past this kind of, oh, he can do this and I can't kind of idea. Once you get past that, you discover the human, or if you take time, you discover the human, and you realize that they're a mixture of a whole bunch of good and bad, just like everybody. And yes, he is probably also ultimately because, and this was the other thing that was very important for us, because he didn't have that family, he didn't have that anchoring stuff, he didn't have the people around him to help kind of guide him and corral him in the same way. And so that's something that happens in Rex too. This was really important for us. Rex is an orphan, but he does have a family, so it doesn't need to be blood relations. It does need to be a community around you. And so that's what Six and Doc Holliday was a different type of family. But the idea that if and this for Rex specifically, and Kevin is very similar in a lot of ways. Actually, in a lot of ways, they're similar emotionally. Their landscape inside is they have a lot of power. What for Kevin, whatever he touched, he could make come out of him. For Rex, whatever information he got inside, he would make tools that would come out, and they would represent what was inside. It's kind of the idea of whatever's put into you will come out, will see itself, and without that kind of guidance, without that kind of community, you might become somebody who's a little more dangerous to be with. Or if you're guided by the wrong people who are using you as opposed to looking out for the best for you. I think that's important. So those were part of the themes for both of those characters, and Kevin was the first one. So it was from a Ben point of view. This guy seems cooler. He's taller. The girls like him. All of this kind of stuff. But he's also a troubled guy, and in a lot of ways, he's just because he has those things doesn't mean that he doesn't have deficiencies in other places. So
I've never thought like that.
Ben bu Kevin hakkında konuştuğum kısmı kaçırdım bu arada.
And
anlamadım.
While talking about family and blood relationship, I want to talk a bit about Big Hero 6. In that project, you have worked on hard themes like grief, loss, new family, and revenge were addressed. And how does making a project based on negative emotions rather than just like a bent and cheerful, humorous protagonist always save the day?
Well, I mean, what's super important, and I do think that this is the big difference between, well, let me frame it this way. Kids aren't stupid. Kids experience everything else that everybody else experiences. They experience loss and grief and fear and chaos, and if they're shown all the time that everything is great, and that the good guy always wins, and that everybody out there, you can spot an evil person because they twist their mustache or they're whatever. I think you're doing a disservice to them. I think that there are ways of having these discussions about life, and that's the difference, I think, between just entertainment and then entertainment with purpose. And so it's, for me, those are super important themes. Those are things that everybody experiences. If you can tell them in a way that isn't shut them down or make them feel stupid, the audience, they go, I felt those things. I know those things. Those are familiar to me. And then see somebody work through those issues, find ways of learning to carry some of those burdens, with them. That's a much more valuable piece of story than telling somebody it's just like, oh, just move on, punch it, and it's all okay. Those kind of things. Those are just much more important stories to tell. So to me, I think we always try to do that. Always. I think Rex has got a very sad backstory. I think, to me, that's real entertainment. Real entertainment makes you see yourself in that material too. If you don't feel that connection, if you don't see a little bit of yourself in this stuff, then it's not going to have any kind of relevance to you. You need to see yourself at least, represented a little bit, and that can be emotionally. It doesn't need to be any other part, but you go, yeah, I've experienced that. I know that feeling. I think that's everything. I think that's the point. That's the point of storytelling, or at least that's the point I like to be a part of when it comes to storytelling.
Yeah, and that reminded me, like, music, animation, games, films, I see them as a medium of telling something, a story. And I guess in today's world, there are some emotions that most of the people feel. They are really common, like achieving your potential, or fighting with life, or feeling discriminated, feeling lonely. And the way I see the artists who can capture that core essence of our collective emotion can succeed to a wide range of audience.
I agree. Going back to your skibbity toilet thing, what that is that's a distraction. That gives you a moment of distraction, and we all need those, by the way. We all need those, like, little distractions. It's fun. But when distractions get in the way of wrestling with everything that you were talking about, all of those types of feelings, if they get in the way, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're also doing an audience a disservice. There's people who will do nothing but eat candy all day long if they could, but that's not good for them. They need to consume a lot of different things if they're going to remain healthy and physical and all of those things. And it's up to us now. What used to be
denemez bence. Sevmeme rağmen
both good and bad.
Düşürdük denemez.
Used to be kind of mediated by, well, over here it was going to be the markets, but it's also, there's we have this thing called S&P, which is a government organization that says what is standards and practices, what can you show and what can't you show. And every culture has some version of that, right? There is that can be heavy-handed. You can be told something that somebody else wants you to know without you making that, without you making those individual choices yourself. Sometimes they're watching out for you, but sometimes they're also trying to advance their agenda, their ideas. And so with the stuff that we have now, there's a lot less of that. There's a lot more of direct from one person's head to another person's head, which is a good thing. But we need to learn how to become responsible consumers too. We need to find the stuff that we feel is going to educate us, give us perspectives, allow us to be good students in life, as opposed to just people who want to eat candy all day long.
6-5-4 ama hepsi gene birbirlerine yakınlar. Yani Kadem olarak aynılar
Yeah.
yani.
But that's up to
Definitely.
us now.
Ben Ten'i
That's up to
düşürdü
us
mü?
now.
Düşürdü. Ama bu genel
Yeah.
olarak dünyada olan bir şey.
And I do
Ferhat
agree with you. I
Kuyur,
do
Doğukan
think that the
Stüdyo
people
konuşuyor.
that I
Onlar iş
gravitate
yaptığı
towards,
için
and I do
konuşuyorlar.
think
Ben
people
mesela
who
konuşuyorum.
have
Çünkü ciddiye almıyorum Ben Ten'i.
some
Çünkü herhangi
lasting
bir
value, people
yaptığı
that
hiçbir
other
şey
people
umurumda değil
will
benim.
talk about and projects
Ama para
are
kazandırıyor
coming
yani.
from that
Çocuk
spirit.
işi para kazandırıyor. Yani gidip
They're approaching in
ninni bile
that spirit.
söyletebilirsin yani.
They are
Para
attempting
kazanmanın da
to
adamlar bir şey demiyorum.
relate.
Ama
They are
başarılarını
attempting to
ortaya koyma
communicate.
konusunda hiçbir franchise şu an
Yeah.
başarılı değil. En
Definitely.
son tek başarılı bulduğum yapım en son
Then moving on with my
DC'de James
next
Gunn'ın yaptığı
question.
Superman filmi. Hatırladığım kadarıyla en son başarılı iş oydu.
Yeah. In one of your interviews, you said Cartoon Network affected the show, and I wonder, and they, I guess, affected like the number of
Ben de teşekkür
superheroes
ederim.
Omnitrix has.
Katıldığıma sorular sorduğun
And
için.
according
Yorumlarını
to you,
kattığın
as
için.
a creator of the show, which parts do you think are robust and should remain untouched?
Well, if there was one part that Cartoon Network, if there was one part that Cartoon Network initially wanted to change that we fought very hard for, to said, no, we just won't sell it to you if this changes. This just won't happen. Is they took some of the work that we had done, and they do these things called focus groups where they show groups of kids and get their responses. It's it's a business thing. I don't ascribe to them at all. But this is how they make decisions about whether they're going to move forward with projects as they take them through these focus groups. And the focus groups, all of the kids wanted Ben to be able to have complete control over his Omnitrix, know how to use it, turn whatever heroes, not make mistakes, not screw up, not do. They wanted him to be in charge. We said no. I think it kind of feeds back to what we were just talking about. Like if you, everybody wants candy. Candy's great, but you know what? Maybe not. Life isn't candy. Life is a lot of other things too, and one of them is learning stuff. And it shouldn't all come easy. It shouldn't all happen. And also, there's no good stories in if he could figure everything out. It would be the same story again and again. So that was one thing that they were like, well, the focus groups and all these kids are really feeling. It's like, no, we're not going to change that. That we can't change. As far as like, his powers and things like that, I think the aliens was the best idea for the time. It was. And we also went with the notion that it gives him an opportunity to walk in other people's shoes, see what it feels like to be the other, to be something outside of what they're normally used to. Those things are good themes, and they're good, strong themes to tell a lot of stories with, because, just as infinite array of people are out there, so are the stories, So I think that's a benefit. That was something that Cartoon Network wanted to have. Ultimately, they did not want to have him switching with versions of himself. Because they thought it was too scientifically complicated of an idea for little kids, and probably were right about that, by the way. But it allowed us, and this is that thing going way back to things not going the way that you intended, but something new opens up and a new idea opens up. You've got to remain open to that possibility. That's where really important and good stuff happens. I also think something original happens. If you kind of think and where it's going to go and where it's going to wind up being, you're probably copying somebody. You're probably, without knowing it, you're probably doing something that you've seen before. It's when you don't know where you're going and you have no idea how it's going to end up that you're doing something original. And that's a very important. There's some people who get very afraid of that and pull back, and then there are other people who go, let's go into this. Let's come up with what we are. We're now in virgin territory. This is not something that any of us know. So let's see what we can find.
James Gunn DC evreni, Superman filmi falan gibi şeyleri.
I guess
Bu mülteciler eskiden de vardı yani. Eskiden de
making that
çok Marvel
decision
içeriği üretiyordu. Hala da
makes
öyle
people
içerik
grow,
üretiyor.
and
Marvel artık daha
it's
azaldı
like
tabii de.
getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I resonate with that with myself also, because I was, trying to go to a university, but I couldn't. And now I had to adapt my life conditions according to it. And I realized that amazing and original things came out of that.
I think that if you can keep that as one of your core ways of dealing with life as it comes at you, you can walk towards something, but you're not always going to get there. But if you can figure out and find new ways, or take those lessons in and find out how you can turn it into something that is positive for yourself, that is a gift that if you can give yourself that gift, that is a gift that will last you your whole life, because you will always run into that
Ben de
dynamic. And
eskiden
I
hep
think some
izlerdim her
some
videoda bu
people
tarz şeylerde ama
they get defeated and they
artık
start
yaş
thinking that
ilerledikçe bir de artık
life's out to get them
mesela
and all
Marvel
of these things, and
serüveni
they
Endgame'e
stop
kadar
learning.
çok
And
peakti,
it's
hype'tı.
about always
Ama ondan
remaining
sonra çok da takip
being
edesim
a
gelmedi
student,
yani.
always,
Yalan
even of
söyleyeyim.
yourself.
Yaptıkları gene hype vardı bir süre ondan sonra.
Yeah. And
2009'dan
in this
sonra,
part, I
Endgame'den
wonder,
sonra ama gittikçe bu düşmeye
every
başladı ve
time
artık çok
life
kalitesiz
puts
işler
us
çıkmaya başladı.
in a
Her yerde.
situation that we don't know
Özellikle
what to
SC
do,
ve
how to
Walkman'le
deal with it, and
artık
this
bu tarz multiplayer
improves us
şeyleri
and
izlemek
makes
yerine
us grow. But
dediğin gibi böyle
I
zaman zaman izlediğim oluyor
I
işte.
wonder
Superman
if it's
filmleri
possible
mutluydum.
to just
James Cameron olayları
realize
falan
that
izledim.
in your
Ama artık
life
sadece daha
you are
çok
in your
eleştirel şeyleri
comfort
izliyorum.
zone
İşte
and
filmograf,
you are
filmler,
remain
filmler
the
gibi
same,
gibi.
and you are with just
Haberi
your
gerçekten
free
ilgimi
will
çeken bir şey varsa izliyorum artık.
put yourself in a dangerous situation where you don't know nothing to do
Mesela
and you are
Doğukan
stressed
Stüdyo'da
out.
Ferhat Kucur'u ilk
That is
keşfettiğim zamanlar birazcık izlemiştim.
one of
2020'lerde
the
olması
things that
lazım.
I often
21, 22 olabilir
intentionally do.
bilmiyorum. Ondan sonra
I throw myself
yok
into
dedim ya artık bu
positions that
kadar
I don't
şeye
know.
gerek yok dedim.
Wow.
İzlemiyorum artık. Bazen
It's
shortları
very
düşüyor karşıma.
important for me. When you don't always know that you're in a comfort zone. You don't. It's kind of like does a fish know that they're in water? You don't. You don't always understand that you are comfortable. But I think that if you aren't constantly finding ways to challenge yourself, and challenge is that's a relative term. Some people think they're challenging themselves when really all they're doing is, I don't know. They're kind of repeating something they've already done before, but they're getting into a fight with somebody or something. True challenge is when you feel a little bit of fear, when you feel a little like a discomfort and fear. And I do. I grew up in a different part of the country and I moved to California. I didn't know anybody. I threw myself into these positions and I had no idea if any of it was going to work for me or not. I just did it. As you get older, I suppose you take less of them from a physical point of view. You have to, I have to keep eyes out for my kids and my family and things like that. So I'm not going to do necessarily things like that, but creatively, yes, I'm always trying something I haven't done before, always.
Yeah.
I think it's important. If you don't do that, I think that's sad, personally. When I'm feeling comfortable, I get nervous.
Yeah, that's truly inspiring for everybody, I guess.
You have to be conscious about it as best as you can be. You're going to screw up. Everybody does. I'm not always, it's what I try to do. It's what I aspire towards. So.
Yeah. Okay. Sir, I wonder how much time more you can spare us today.
I got about 10 more minutes. 10 more
10
minutes.
more minutes. Okay. I got it. Yeah. Then I'm moving on with my next question. Yeah. In one of your interviews, you said that you like superheroes who have one superpower and focus on it to solve problems, and their superpower can't easily solve, especially challenges. And while creating a superhero from scratch, and how do you start and how do you shape it?
Well, I mean, if you think about a superpower as a tool, like if all of a sudden you had a hammer, or if you had a saw, or if you had a wrench or something, it's all the different problems or how you could solve the same problem that somebody who had a hammer and you have a wrench. How can you solve the same problem but using that tool? It's always fun because then you're seeing a mind at work. You're seeing a character, and that reveals more about Ben in those particular situations than it does about the super ability. The abilities are cool, and you want them to be visual, and you want them to be fun, and you want them. But what's really, I think, when we were talking about the relatability, what's important is you're seeing Ben work this out, figure out how to use what he's got in front of him the best that he can. To me, those are where stories come from. That's where character comes from. All of those things. That's what I meant by those superpowers. When you get a character that is so powerful, like Alien X, who I personally, when they get so powerful where they can do anything, that becomes difficult storytelling. You can only tell one or two different stories with those characters. And the fact that they don't, that character can't decide how to act, that's fun. But how many times are you going to want to watch that? That same kind of thing. It depends on the other story that you're telling about indecision and how that affects the outcome of something. Then that becomes interesting. But there's only so many of those kind of stories that you can tell. And I mean, well, let's just take Superman as a good one. Why does he need a Justice League? Why does he need an Aquaman or a Flash or any of these other characters when he can go underwater? He can go fast as Flash. He can do all of these things. It becomes boring of a character because of that. What makes him interesting, and the only thing that really makes him interesting, is that he doesn't choose to take over the world and make it all the way he wants to, because that's what he could. And that's what makes that character interesting, is that he has the power to go in and tell everybody else how to do everything. But he doesn't. He tries to work with people. And that's where he becomes interesting. But, you can only tell so many of those stories, even, I think. But
yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think it's any different. You take a look at something like Wild Beast or Wild Mutt. You take somebody like Wild Mutt. What was really interesting is that he doesn't see the world; he smells the world. So all of a sudden, he doesn't have eyes. It's his gills that smell everything. So it's just fun to tell a story about. I mean, you walk down the street, and just imagine if you just closed your eyes and smelled everything as you were walking down the street, what kind of world you would have just walked down was a very different world than the one that you walked down with your eyes. And isn't it fun to kind of put yourself into those positions and think about how to see the world differently and how to experience it differently? And also the stories that you're going to discover that maybe because you rely too much on your eyes, you're missing out on some really interesting things that happened on that street. Maybe ones you want to stay away from, but also maybe ones that draw you in. So it's cool that way too, with these kind of powers, is how you see the world and how you look at it. There's an old saying that to a hammer, every problem is a nail. Which means that you just go around smacking everything because that's what hammers do. But maybe not every problem is a nail. Maybe there are other ways to solve these problems. But you wouldn't know that if you didn't have a different perspective and a different power. So.
Okay, thank you. And it's a bit personal, but you can answer whatever you like.
Okay.
And I would like to know, how do you spend your day from morning till night? What do you do? Do you have a routine or something?
I think that's actually a really good question, especially when people are going to be working more out of their homes and not going into offices, and that a lot of stuff will be remote. I have 3 kids. They're all older now, but this is when I was, they're all university and up now, but it was very important for me because I worked at home. Most of the time it's in my head. I'm at a drawing table or I'm at a computer and I'm writing. Most of the time it's in my head. And that's to get into that place where I can do real work. And there isn't necessarily the deadline. Deadlines are very helpful. They've actually helped me a great deal. They brought structure to me that I wouldn't have had without them. But I do go through some rituals. What I used to find was if I was working and I heard my kids playing or my wife hollering at them or whatever, family life over there, part of my head would get pulled over there and I would stop working and I would worry about, I'd start trying to be dad, I'd try to move over there. And conversely, maybe I didn't quite get the work done I needed to get done by the next day, or I was in something that was really, captured me creatively and I wanted to finish. And I would be spending time with my family at those moments, but my head would be over at work going, what if I did this? And I would find myself in two different, never in one place. I was always split focused. I would always be in those two places. So what rituals are very important for me, however you can do that, to say, for some people, they get in a car, they put on a suit and a tie, they put on their work mindset and they go someplace. I had to create those things for myself internally that had the same kind of meaning so that I could be, when I'm at work, I'm at work. When I'm at home, I'm at home. As best I could. And I'll tell you right now, I failed, but those were, you try your best. But rituals are super important. So yeah, I do. I make myself some breakfast. I go through all of these things. I say goodbye, and then I go into work. And while I'm at work, I do that. And when I give myself, I'm ending work at 6 o'clock, and I'm going to go in and help make dinner or whatever, I am now off work. And I go through the process of shutting off lights. I do kind of a very ritualized thing, a habitual thing for me. Because without that, I would be back in that kind of oceanic, place that sometimes you have to be just to get stuff done. But the more you can separate those things for yourself, and the more that you can give yourself goals from a work point of view, say, even I have some friends who have they do have a TikTok account and they do skits and things like that. And they weren't quite sure what they were going to do. They were getting some success. And I said, for the next year, just do this. Say to yourself, for this year, until that date, I'm going to put out something every Tuesday, every Thursday, every Saturday, and make sure that it comes out. Turn yourself into a professional for the next year. At the end of that year, decide whether or not it's still working for you. Make that decision then. Don't question it during this time. Just focus on doing what you committed yourself to doing. Those kind of techniques, if you can make yourself that kind of professional for yourself, you will accomplish more. You'll meet goals that you've set for yourself, things you wanted for yourself. I think those are essential, especially now that we live in a time where you have to be, much like what kind of material you're going to consume. Is it skippity toilet or am I going to read a long book? That's up to you. And you need to be much more present in the decisions that you make. And if you have that kind of discipline, you will be able to set goals for yourself and meet them in ways that some people are very easygoing to some other job where somebody tells them to do something. It's super easy because then they don't have to do any of that. And that's fine. I think everybody has that part of them. But if you can cultivate the other one, that you do it for yourself, you turn yourself into a boss for yourself and for your goals. Well, then you've got another tool for yourself. Yeah, I think that's essential. If you want to live a creative life, that's an essential tool.
Yeah. Thank you for the answer. I want to ask last two questions. When I talked to my best friend about what should I ask to the creator of Ben 10, he told me that I should ask, how is the sensation of being the creator of a series which shaped the entire childhood of a generation, you know?
Humbling. I'd have to say it's humbling. I don't think I did much thinking about that when I was younger. That wasn't I was too frantic about making my mark, working on things that I wanted to work on. I didn't think about effect as much as I do now. But I will tell you this. Two things. One, it's super difficult for me, maybe not for other people, but it was very difficult to think of myself as an artist. You know, it's just imagine yourself going, I'm a poet, telling people that, you know, at school or something. I'm a poet, and taking it seriously. That's how it felt when I would tell people I'm an artist. Like, what? You know, and it's just it's this kind of, I don't know, it comes with a lot of baggage. It comes with a lot of like, oh, you think you're important or whatever. There's a lot of social kind of pressure on it. And so I used to think that so I would say, oh, I work in animation, or oh, I work in publishing, or something like that. But I wouldn't say what I am as a creative artist. It was embarrassing for me for some reason when I was younger. But once it occurred to me that all of the people who made my life a little bit richer, and I think I've already said this, once it occurred to me, and I got a chance to meet some of them and thank them for what they did for me. You know, I grew up in a small town and I didn't know anybody. And these were the things that expanded my imagination. These are the things that filled my life with, you know, wonder and all of those kind of things. And it was important. Once I realized that my work was doing that for some other people, it became very humbling. It was like, oh, wow. And I think at that point was when I realized, you know, calling yourself an artist can be kind of a selfish thing, like I'm an artist. But when you say that what you're doing is you're part of something that is hopefully you're paying forward. You're, you know, just like what my heroes did for me. If I can do that for other people, I consider that a life well lived. So yeah, that's what I am. I'm an artist, and I think I didn't realize that that's what I was doing until the scale got up a little larger. When I was in China, I was in the People's Republic of China, and some little kid was wearing a Ben 10 shirt, and I was like, "Oh, holy cow!" You know, I was like, "Wow," you know, that's we have something in common. We share something in common, and it's not I came up with that, and you like what I came up with. It was like we both think that's cool. That's awesome. And you know, I don't know what else we have in common. Probably a lot, but that was the first thing that you could kind of notice, and you go, "Oh, wow!" And that's a wonderful thing. That kind of connection is pretty great. If you can, Ben 10's big, right? You know, a lot of people know it all over the place, but we all do that in smaller ways in our life anyway. So, you know, maybe it was just I was too dull to kind of get it until it got bigger. But I see kids dress up like that for characters, Ghost Freak for Halloween or whatever, and it's just wonderful. It's great. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's my last question, and I know that you don't like to compare which one beats which one, but I gotta ask, in a fight, who would win, Diamond Head or Forearms?
Oh, well, that's a good question. But I
Diamond
think
Head.
I'm going
Elmas
to have to give it
Kodver
to
tabii.
Diamond Head. I'm just going to have to give it to Diamond.
Yeah.
Diamond Head has a lot more attacks. He has long distance attacks that if Forearms ran out of things to throw,
Yeah.
he'd be in trouble. Put them both in the vacuum of space. Diamond Head can still shoot stuff at forearms.
Yeah. I would bet on Diamond Head also. Yeah, sir. It was really inspiring moments with you. You know, we appreciate that you spare your time in order to talk to us. It was really emotional for even me to, you know, talk to the man who created a show which shaped my childhood. And lastly, do you have anything to add or any suggestions maybe?
Go out and create stuff, guys. Go out there and make the world a funner, more exciting place. It's already a scary one, so let's go out there and do some stuff and do some good.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And
Yeah.
best advice you can get.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, today we had Mr. Duncan Rouleau with us. Stay tuned for more. Good evening, goodbye.
Bye.
Ve bitti. Evet. Ben
Yeah,
İngilizce
now
ile ilgili hiçbir şey öğrenemedik neredeyse. Yani. Neyse bugün bu kadar yapacak bir şey zaten çok bir katılım olmadı. Olsaydı ben Galvan oyununu oynayacaktım. Bir de sorular üzerine konuşurduk ama olmadı maalesef. Görüşmek üzere.